Happy Wednesday, and I hope everybody is getting ready for a big 4th of July celebration somewhere, and hopefully we're getting you to that celebration, whether it's on the podcast here on the Husker Online YouTube channel, but thanks for joining us here on another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, and again this week we're brought to you by our friends at Zipline Brewing Company. No better time to pick up a 6-pack of their newest release, ZipLite. 95 calories, 2.7 carbs. It's out in stores. You can pick it up at any of the Zipline locations, their tasting rooms, the restaurant in Fallbrook. That's ZipLite. Or just get, if you got another favorite kind of Zipline beer, take that over to your 4th of July celebration. We're heading to Colorado. I'm going to take probably some of the Zip. I like the can opener flavor. It's a really good citrusy summer beer. Tons of great beers. Thanks again to Zipline for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Headline Show. Okay, headline number 1, Steve Sipple. National pundits are buying some early stock on Nebraska, and I don't want to say this feels like it's this way every year.
It does, though.
It does, and so Nebraska is kind of like a abused victim of the early August, July, people buying in stuff. So, it's funny. Andy Staples, our coworker at On3, he calls for a 7-0 start. You heard Joel Klatt with Matt Rhule and some of the things that he said and how high he is on the Huskers. But you can just sense, and I know you do a radio show every day as well, and we're obviously on the Red Sea Scrolls with our fan base, very connected. Not a lot of, it's just a lot of optimism, but nobody's like just all in on these early predictions because we've seen it and kind of watched these things play out, obviously, over the last 10 years.
Well, we have. It's interesting because there's some legitimacy to it. I think 7-0 is really going out there, but I guess that's what you do. But they're good. They have a lot of good players on this team. They have a lot of returning experience. They had a top 10 defense. They have a excitement at quarterback. I'll just say excitement at quarterback. I think you have a lot of potential at quarterback. You have and as you point out a lot, the schedule's very manageable. So I get it. It doesn't bother me. We do it every year, though. We do it every summer pretty much, but it's fine because I think there's some legitimacy.
I think the difference is this first 7 games, and Andy Staples pointed out the 7-0 prediction. There's not an opponent on there that generally recruits higher ranked classes than Nebraska. That there's not an Ohio State. There's not a Michigan. There's not a Penn State.
That's true.
There's not a I look at Colorado as a great rivalry. I don't look at that as a marquee, like playing USC in the non-conference in 06 and 05 or 06 and 07. I don't look at that Colorado game as a daunting challenge because Nebraska's going to play it at night in Lincoln. And this is the first time since 2019 Nebraska will open at home and also open against a non-Power 5 or now Power 4 opponent.
Yeah, there's all that. That's a good point that none of these teams in the first 7 recruited a higher level than Nebraska. Rhule doesn't do anything to pour cold water on any of this. He told Joel Klatt in an recent interview, I expect to make a massive jump from year 1 to year 2. Now, that's in the context. He always expects that. He expected that when he coached at Temple. He expected that when he coached at Baylor. And there were massive jumps. They went from, at Temple, I think they went from 1-11 to 6-6. And at Baylor, I think it was 2-10 to 7-6. It was in those ranges. They did make a massive jump. So he expects a massive jump here.
Well, every coaching change that we've seen, they're generally at Nebraska since the Solich switch. There's generally been a pretty good year 2 jump anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Callahan in 05 had a great year 2 jump where they beat Colorado and they beat Michigan. You go through Bo Pelini and in 2009 was one of the high points of the last 20 some years. That was year 2 of Bo Pelini.
Yep.
When they almost won the Big 12 championship against Texas. You could go to year 2 of Mike Riley, and they had their last 9-win season at Nebraska. They went to a bowl game, and really Scott Frost, it was set up for him in year 2 in 2019 to have a big year. They were picked to win the Big Ten West. They were ranked in the top 25 AP preseason poll, and they blew it at Colorado. They just blew it. Literally, you had an army of troops that assembled in Boulder, Colorado, ready to take the city.
Very good.
And everybody got the memo but Nebraska.
Yeah. Who was on that?
Wandell Robinson, JoJo Doman, Adrian Martinez. I mean, you go down the line.
Maurice Washington was good in that game, right?
Yeah. I mean, that team was loaded.
Yeah.
Not, I want to say loaded, but they had a lot of talent.
Yeah, loaded's going too far, but they were pretty.
I mean, they had NFL players.
Yeah. How do you think that team was compared to this one? That Nebraska team compared to this one.
The 2019 team
was the defense
still had the Davis twins.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good.
I mean,
Doman and the Davis twins, and I'd have to look to see. I know I put you on the spot. I'd have to look to see who Nebraska had in the secondary that year. I can't remember who Frost had in that 2019 year.
Cam Taylor Britt, would he have been?
Well, that's pretty good if he was on that team. So I'd like to see, and we don't have to do it right now. I should do that. I
mean, you had Hymas, you had Farniak, you had Jurgens. I mean, you had a pretty good offensive line when you break it down. Like,
yep.
I mean, I'm looking at what the depth chart would have been in 2019. Hold on here.
Yeah,
I got to pull up here.
Do it, Sean. It's interesting to me.
Ad blocker things keep blocking the depth chart here. Okay, so like Nebraska in 2019. Oh, this is Colorado's depth chart. This doesn't mean no good. Son of a gun. All right. Well, they had a good roster in that year, and it was set up for that.
They spit the bit at CU big time.
Well, and this is another year too. I mean, you just look at history of year twos under coaching changes since Frank Solich, and look, Frank Solich in his year two, 99, they were number one in the country for a while.
Yep, they're loaded. They were loaded.
I mean, so there's nothing wrong with thinking that this team can be good, because the history of every coach here, other than the Frost 2019 year, and that was supposed to be a good team, has had a good year too at Nebraska.
Yeah. And again, this team looks pretty good. I mean, if you just look at it, Sean, this is the way I look at it. If you can have a representative running game, a decent running game where you move the line of scrimmage fairly consistently. Now, what's that do? It gives the young quarterback some time and space to work. And he has some guys to throw to. That's where the excitement picks up in my voice. He has Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor and Thomas Fedoni and Seathan Carter. Carter Nelson. Seathan Carter. How about that?
Okay,
Carter Nelson. He has some guys to throw to. Go ahead.
2019. These are like some of the notable guys in the NFL now from Nebraska. Cameron Jurgens, Brandon Hymas, Adrian Martinez, Maurice Washington, Matt Farniak, Jack Stahl, JD Spielman, Austin Allen. Those are offensive starters.
That's a good. Okay. That's good on offense. What on defense?
Defense. Your corners were Cam Taylor Britt, NFL. Lamar Jackson, NFL. DiCaprio Boodle, NFL. Khalil Davis, Carlos Davis, NFL players.
Yep.
Now they were weak at linebacker. Muhammad Berry, Colin Miller. That was a weak spot.
Oh yeah.
No pros there. No. I mean, that's
no.
Darian Daniels was a good nose.
Surprising
he didn't make in the NFL. Alex Davis, they were weak on the edge. Alex Davis was not an elite Big Ten pass rusher.
No, he wasn't.
And then they were weak at safety. Eric Lee and Markel DeSmuke. I mean, those weren't elite safe, but they had some players.
Yeah, that's not bad. I would say what you just read to me, not as good as this team though.
Wandell Robinson, JoJo Doman.
Yeah, that's
Quentin Newsom was on that team and played in that game.
Mm-hmm.
You can go down the line. Garrett Nelson played good snaps in that game.
Not quite as good as this team.
Ben Stilley. But yeah,
that's pretty good though.
I mean, that roster though, that team underachieved. I mean, that was a bad season.
Coaching job. Come on.
They got to delay a game to start the second half, up 17 points.
Bad.
On the first play.
Yeah.
But
not a bad roster though.
One more thing I want to make about this schedule too. I'll take it another step, a 2024 step, NIL. Look at the 12 opponents on that schedule. If we can pull up the schedule again, I want you to tell me which teams on there, in your opinion, would have equal or better NIL than Nebraska.
I don't even have to look at it. I'd say off the top of my head, okay, there it is. USC's probably in the neighborhood.
In Ohio State.
Yeah, USC's about 15 million. That's what Scott Schrader told me. Ohio State would exceed Nebraska.
Now, Colorado, their NIL, like it I'm sure it's solid, but it just doesn't feel like it just doesn't feel like it's like a Rob Peter to pay Paul NIL plan. It doesn't really have
I don't know that, but yeah, that might be right. USC, I know USC's in the $15 million range for its football team, which I think that's what Nebraska is, $15 million range.
Yeah. I mean, Nebraska could be as high as the roster needs it to be
within reason.
I think there's this Nebraska's low. Well, you've got to have players that are worth paying. If Nebraska is paying $20 million, which the Peds in the NIL could do that, you'd expect $20 million results.
And that would be 11 to 12 wins
and draft picks.
Right. Yeah. 100.
So,
yeah.
But
it's off. Yeah. I think that's part of NIL that people don't understand. They say Nebraska, Nebraska's trailing behind Oregon and Ohio State. No, they're not. If Nebraska had that sort of roster, they would pay it. They don't have that sort of roster. You don't want to overpay. You don't want to pay $20 million to a roster that's maybe going to win eight games. I'm not limiting Nebraska to 8 wins, but that's about what it looks like right now.
If you're just, especially if the start's what you want it to be. But all right, before we get to headline number 2, Husker Online headlines again brought to you by Zipline Brewing Company and their new ZipLite beer, 95 calories, 2.8 carbs. Get a 6-pack of ZipLite, take it to your 4th of July party. But also, Steve Sipple, get some Omaha Steaks. We're proud to be partnered up with Omaha Steaks, and I got to tell you, last night I cooked. I did the filet mignon burgers from Omaha Steak.
Oh my God, Sean!
And they were. I'm not just saying this. They were some of the best burgers I've ever had. And my wife and my daughters were like, "Where are these hamburgers from?" I go, "They're Omaha Steaks. They're filet mignon hamburgers," and they were incredible. And they still have that burger perfection flight, but a ton of great deals right now. A lot of packages and boxes are 50% off already at Omaha Steaks. We're going to give you, though, another $30 off. You got to use that promo code HuskerOnline at checkout. There's a little area in there. You type in your promo code, $30 off already. So the list price you see is the 50% off price in most cases. And then we're going to throw another $30 off at Omaha Steaks with the promo code HuskerOnline. They still have that burger perfection flight. In fact, I had it in my cart last night. I was thinking about getting more of those filet mignon burgers.
Did you have 2?
Just one.
Did you just have one?
But really? they were outstanding. I mean, some of the best burgers I've ever had. Melt in your mouth good. OmahaSteaks.com. Thanks for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online show. Okay, we talked about Nebraska in the early predictions. What about their opponent in week 2, Colorado? Headline number 2, Colorado is picked number 11 in the Big 12 preseason media poll. And this is a media poll where everybody gets a vote. Anybody that's going to their media days event get a vote in the poll. I'm sure you remember in the Big 12, that's how it used to be.
That's 61 voters.
So like Nebraska would always get really good votes in the Big 12 media poll, because naturally Nebraska would bring as many media to the Big 12 media days, and Nebraska would be picked to win the North a lot of years because of the large amount of media. If the ticket brought 12 people, which they bring a lot, your station, you'd get 12 people that could vote. If you want to fill it out and go through the rigmarole, I am a voter again in the official Cleveland.com poll for the Big 12. And it was hard. You had to rank every team 1 through 18, just like this Big 12 poll. But what do you think at Colorado, number 11?
Well, it's interesting because you get some mixed reviews on Colorado. EA Sports recently ranked the rosters in college football, and they ranked Colorado 20th. So so you just take it all with a grain of salt. It's hard to know what to expect from Colorado because the last I checked, and this was a couple weeks ago, they had 39 incoming transfers, 39. And I'm going to say 40 because when I talked to Brian Howell of the Boulder Daily Camera, he said it's 39, but a player's coming today. So it was 40 a few weeks ago. Then they have 10 incoming freshman scholarship players, 50 new players. Okay. I don't know. I don't know what to say about them. It's an all new offensive line.
And a lot of new coaches.
Well, that's
Warren Sapp is coaching there.
That's something that gets overlooked. You're right. Their new defensive coordinator, if you've heard of him, I'll be shocked. His name is Robert Livingston. Does the name ring a bell?
Well,
he was the secondary coach.
Sean Lewis left, their offensive coordinator, a year ago.
Yeah, Robert Livingston was the Cincinnati Bengals secondary coach for 10 years. Excuse me, past 8 years, Cincinnati Bengals secondary coach. Their offensive coordinator is now Pat Shurmur. Sean Lewis was demoted in early November last year. Shurmur was promoted, but that was, it was November. They have 2 new coordinators, 50 new players, 2 new coordinators. I don't know what to expect. I know this. They have, you could argue, the best offensive player in the Big 12 and the best defensive player in the Big 12. Usually you're not ranked 11th in your own conference if you have the best offensive player and the best defensive player. Now, Shedeur might not be the best offensive player. The Oklahoma State running back is the preseason offensive player of the year. But find me a better quarterback in that conference.
Well, this strikes me too as Big 12 media. They're like, we're not just going to buy into this reality TV show in Boulder.
Right.
They're not,
you're calling it a reality TV show.
Well, that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah, you always got to watch yourself a little bit in these conversations, Sean, because 36-14 happened last
You're
year.
right.
The reality show rolled over Nebraska pretty easy.
Yeah, because of the quarterback position.
Right.
Nebraska was a series away from grasping that game in the second quarter.
I thought that was the case.
Gabe Ervin was running downhill, and that's, they missed a field goal. They had some major momentum rolling there. And then when your quarterback literally has 3 turnovers in a row, I don't care who you're playing.
No, and then the momentum got going against them. Colorado added 10 offensive linemen from the portal. Think about Nebraska. Sean, your head would explode if Nebraska added 10 offensive linemen from the transfer portal. Your head would explode in the offseason.
And how good will they be
together
in Memorial Stadium with close to 90,000 people, and what's probably going to be one of the loudest nights. Whatever kind of light show you can do, they're going to multiply that by 100 that night.
It'll look like Las Vegas.
There's going to be a Herbie Husker drone just punching out I get a buffalo.
Here's what the Colorado fans are going to say to you, because I heard from them. They're going to say, well, good luck with your freshman quarterback. Okay, there's a counter you can make, Sean. I'm helping you in these months leading to the game. When they say, well, you guys have a freshman quarterback, you can say, well, you have a true freshman left tackle protecting Shedeur Sanders. Now, he's a 5-star, just like Dylan Raiola. 5-star recruit, his name is Jordan Seaton. Probably will hold down the left tackle job. True freshman. Their right tackle, 12-game starter for Indiana last year, Khalil Benson. They have some guys, Sean. Now, that's the thing. It's tricky. There's no doubt about that they have skill position players. The receiving core is good, and they have an NFL quarterback.
Why did Dylan Edwards leave, though, and go? Dylan Edwards was their best freshman last year, and he left to go to Kansas State. So, look, the opening game against North Dakota State is going to be must-see TV.
100.
I am going to be locked into that opener to watch Colorado against the Bison.
It's just the same as last year, too, expectations-wise. If you talk to Brian Howell, again, Brian Howell covers them. He expects, 6, 7, 8 wins for Colorado. He expects them to be a bowl team. That's probably about what we expect for Nebraska. Maybe we're more like 7, 8, or 9, but close enough, right?
And for them, the schedule takes somewhat of a break, but they still play a lot of those Pac-12 opponents they did a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Utah is a very good program, but Texas Tech, Arizona, I think it's going to be hard for them to get 6 on that schedule.
Okay. I don't know. Again, it's hard to predict them. I don't know how you predict them with much confidence because of all the new faces. 10 transfer portal offensive linemen, a rebuilt offensive line. How do you project how they're going to be? Now, it might look really good. It has to look better than last year. Sean, they gave up 56 sacks last year. Colorado gave up 56 sacks. That's the second most in the FBS. Okay. I don't think they'll give up 56 sacks again, right? That's an incredible number.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because with a new lineman, a new scheme,
new scheme.
And how many hits can Shedeur Sanders take like that? I mean,
right.
and make it through a season.
I don't know.
Do you think Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson and those guys are licking their chops for a shot at Colorado?
Yeah. Jamari Butler coming off the edge. Think about Jamari Butler. You think about guys like Cam Lenhart, James Williams. Oh, it's going to be that.
I am so looking forward to that week.
It's going to be.
We've already talked about the post-game show, how fun that's going to be doing that. I mean, hopefully a win for Nebraska. It'll make that show memorable.
I hope so.
There will be Mexican restaurant waitresses bringing in margaritas to you if they win that game.
That would be a sight.
I mean, they will come in and just keep giving you margaritas and say, keep talking. We want to listen.
Into the wee hours.
It will be a late night, but
into the wee hours.
All right, before we take it to headline number 3, Husker Online headlines brought to you by Zipline Brewing Company and their new ZipLite beer. But also, we're proud to be linked up with our newest partner here of the Husker Online show, Nebraska Synthetic Greens. And they're the leading premium artificial grass, golf greens, playground, sport field installer in Nebraska. And what they do, it's so cool. If you have space in your backyard and you want to put a putting green, a chipping green, a golf hole, they do this for professional golfers, but they can do it for you too. It's a Nebraska-based company. Several different pro golfers out there utilize their products. Nick Faldo, Mark O'Meara, Ben Crenshaw. You go down the line. A lot of these guys have one of these installed in their backyard. It goes great on a playground as well. But it's just one of those ways like, man, I wish I had time to practice my golf swing, had time to chip putt. You can get in your backyard, and Nebraska Synthetic Greens is who you want to contact for that. They've also got a special sip. If you're a Husker Online listener and you tell them that you heard about them on our show, after your consultation, they will provide you your first annual maintenance service a year after installation for free. That's up to a $1,000 value sip.
I just want to say one thing. You don't have to have a huge backyard to put in a green. I mean, you can just putt on it. You don't need to hit your approaches on it. This is a great idea. So Nebraska Synthetic Greens is what we're talking about. Give them a call. They'll put a green in for you.
What's their number, Sip?
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Sean. 402-238-9960. That's 402-238-9960.
You see that? They'll even do like a pickleball court for you.
Whoa, really? Okay. A lot of people, you don't have, I want to emphasize, you don't have to have a huge backyard to put a green and a pickleball court in.
This could be something like a high school. If they had somebody say, I want to put this in for my golf team.
Oh yeah. Or that or pickleball court at a high school is a good idea too. I mean, it's
a lot of great products. Thanks again to Nebraska Synthetic Greens for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online show. Okay. Breaking news here. Headline 3, Nebraska picks up commitment number 15 from offensive lineman Sean Hammerbeck out of Winter, South Dakota. He's the 3rd offensive lineman now in the class of 2025. He is now their 3rd they've gotten a commitment from on the O-line since June 27th. The Huskers have now added 6 different commitments. 7 now. 7 commitments since June 5th when Jamarian Parker committed to the Big Red. So Nebraska up to 15 commits. They're ranked number 27th now with this commitment addition in the On3 industry team rankings.
What has happened here really since June 16th when Malcolm Simpson committed is Nebraska's done a good job of adding bigs, athletic bigs. Malcolm Simpson is an excellent defensive line prospect. Now, Hammerbeck, athletic big. Sean, 6'5.5", 265. Actually played tight end for Winter, South Dakota. Can play defensive end. Probably doesn't have the explosion you want to play defensive end at the college level, but he is a perfect body type to grow into an offensive tackle. Reminds me of the kind of guy Milt Tenniper would have went after back in the day. Kid from Winter, South Dakota, slightly undersized right now, but get him to Nebraska, put him in the weight room, put him in that nutrition program, and watch him get to 290 like that. And again, basketball player, good feet, athletic, good tight end, great get. And I love what's happened up front the last week or so. Adding Brian Tapu, adding Houston Kahana-Torres, who's earmarked for center. So you've added a center and 2 tackles. Beautiful. Looks good.
And then, there's probably still at least one more O-lineman I'd say they go after, but 15 commits, 3 of them are offensive line. Hammerbeck out of South Dakota. And we know the history. Nebraska's gotten good players from South Dakota.
Absolutely.
Nate Geary is one of the best they've added in a long time, and Nash Hutmacher. So there generally is going to be at least one player. And now next year in 2026, we've seen Nebraska make 2 offers in South Dakota. Hudson Parliament, an offensive lineman up there who's getting a lot. And then there's a receiver in Sioux Falls as well that's blowing up. And then Terwilliger, the tight end, Cooper Terwilliger.
Oh, yeah.
For 2027, Georgia has offered him.
Yeah.
So this is big to kind of keep that going, because there's at least 3 players in South Dakota for the next 2 years that Nebraska is going to want.
That's critical. Now, getting back to this class, remember, Sean, it wasn't that long ago we were saying this class is pretty good, but they need some oomph. They need some size. They need linemen. Bam, 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 bam. They came. Good job by Donovan Raiola here. Good job by Terrence Knight and locking in Malcolm Simpson. And now you got those bigs that you needed to get. And like you said, they'll probably add another one. Hammerback, by the way, late push from Kansas State. They pushed hard, Sean. Kansas State pushed hard to get him. Texas Tech was in there. Those were the main ones that Nebraska beat out.
Now, in the Big Ten, the rankings, Nebraska, this commitment brings them up to number 9 out of 18. So they're right in the middle of the Big Ten. They're ahead of UCLA. They're ahead of Iowa. But there is quite a gap in terms of the point system we use to get to number 8, 7, and 6. Rutgers is having a great recruiting class. They have 6 4-stars committed to them.
Yeah, Schiano, you watch Schiano because he's got a pretty good team right now, Sean.
He's got 28 commits. They're the 6th best class. I mean, your top 5 is what you'd expect it to be: Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, USC.
Yeah, Rutgers is a bit of a pain in the butt right now for a lot of people. They're pretty good, and look what they're doing in recruiting.
Yeah, Rutgers is having a year now. Wisconsin too. I mean, they have 6 4-stars committed. Washington has 5 4-stars. So Nebraska, there's a pretty sizable gap to get to that 6, 7, 8 class in the Big Ten. Nebraska finds themselves right now smack dab in the middle of the standings here of the Big Ten as the 9th ranked class.
I like this class, but that's not necessarily where you want to be. I mean, you'd like to be a few notches higher, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and that's where the winning part. I mean, how many programs that haven't been to a bowl game since 2016 can recruit much higher than that? Not many.
Right. No, you're right. And again, you're on my radio show this morning, and you said this class was solid. That's what I would say too. It's solid. I totally agree with you. It's solid.
You better identify right, and you better develop. That's the key. If you're going to recruit a class like this, you better identify, you better develop.
And you better, that quarterback is critical in that class too, TJ Latif.
If you're not getting the blue chip of the blue chip guys, you better make the right choices.
Right. Good point.
And that's where Matt Rhule has a track record over the course of his career, and you hope that continues to be the case. All right. Thanks again for joining us here for Husker Online Headlines. Again, we're brought to you by Zipline Beer and Brewing Company. Try their new ZipLite beer. Get some for the 4th of July. Pick up a 6-pack. You will not be disappointed. It's their newest release. 95 calories, 2.7 carbs, ZipLite. All right, headline number 4. Rhule. All of college football will know about Raiola. And that was a comment Matt Rhule made to Joel Klatt in an interview that took place earlier in May, back when the coaches were all in Phoenix for a meeting. It was published this week. It was nearly a 30-minute sit down with Matt Rhule and Joel Klatt. Outstanding interview. But the comments that Rhule said about Dylan Raiola should get your attention.
Yeah. He said, I mean, his last quote about Dylan, Matt Rhule's last quote in this, they jumped around segments like we do. They jumped around topics, I should say. And his last quote on Dylan was he certainly has helped us raise the level of play. And I think he's going to be a guy who all of college football knows. All right. I mean, that's quite I guess an endorsement, would you say? I mean, he's not, now I'm going to say this very respectfully. He's not saying that about Heinrich Harburg and Daniel Kalen. Okay. We always have this discussion. He's also not saying, Rhule's not saying that Dylan's going to be the starter either. We should add that. Dylan's got to go earn it. I think to this point he has, but there's another point now. It's called August. And you don't want to name your quarterback and then have that quarterback come out and throw a bunch of picks on August 7th through August 15th and then kind of leave everybody confused.
And I've talked about, Nebraska fans are kind of whipped victims basically over the years of just buying into this type of time of year. Mm-hmm. Tanner Lee was a great example of that. You kind of
good point.
Ended up being a draft pick at quarterback, but was not good. I mean, Jeff Sims though last year.
Oh God.
I mean, they brought him to Big Ten Media Days.
Yeah.
Amigos named a combo meal after him.
Yeah.
Acres Equipment. And he had advertising deals made with Gary Michaels Suits Company. I mean, he had everybody was in on Jeff Sims. It was supposed to be kind of a can't miss transaction.
It was.
And it was as big of a miss as any in the country.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. It was. And I fell victim to.
No, we all did.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote glowing things about Sims. Remember at Satterfield? And Marcus Satterfield wouldn't mind me sharing this. Satterfield, remember in Belton, Texas last year? Not this year. Last year, one of the I thought most important stories that came out of Belton was Marcus Satterfield's glowing praise for Jeff Sims. I remember interviewing him on that field in Belton and walking away going, whoa, man, Satterfield feels like he has something there. And we wrote it, and it was exciting, and I bought in. But I think this is different. And Rhule, Sean, he does explain himself in this article. I mean, he does kind of back up what he's saying. He says Dylan's talent. And let's make no mistake. This is Sipple talking now, not Rhule. Dylan has massive arm talent. Okay. He's got big time arm. Okay. Rhule said Dylan's talent is only matched by who he is as a person. Okay. You know the Raiolas pretty well. We know the Raiolas pretty well. This is good. It's a good family. It's a great football family. It's a good sports family. They're very they're religious. They're accountable to each other. The picture's really good there. Also, Rhule says this. You always hear Tom Brady and those guys talk about how when your best players work the hardest, you have a great team. He said, well, Dylan's one of those guys who tries to work the hardest. And you know that about Dylan. I know that about Dylan. I never worry about him. I don't worry about him not rising to this occasion. I don't, because I know Dominic and I know I'm very familiar with Dylan. He's very grounded, and his level of want to is through the roof. He wants to be really.
You don't have to worry about him being out on the town.
Oh, he's very.
And I will say, like you heard, Jeff Sims, like you hear he's out on the town a lot. You see him around and
you did hear that.
And I'm not saying, I mean, look, I was out on the town a lot when I was.
Good. Kenny Stabler was out on the town, and he was the best in the NFL for a while.
But
so you can do it.
I don't hear those things like Raiola. No, like he's like a pro the way he operates already.
Yeah, he's amazing. I mean, he'll be over at Donovan's going, before a practice or before the spring game, going over pass protections with Donovan. What they'll do, Sean? They'll be in the living room doing this footwork, the proper footwork for plays. as he's calling out protections. It's serious. It's serious business. You know what, Sean? This is the best way to put it. It's serious business to him. It is. He's making money. He wants to make money. He wants to be an NFL player. This is serious business to him.
When he could have gone anywhere. I mean, you think about Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, Kirby Smart. Who was their first pick as a quarterback? Dylan Raiola.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't care what you say about how things, whatever happened.
Mm-hmm.
Those coaches, the best QB coaches in college football, that was their guy.
Yeah, we got a taste of it in the spring. I mean, listen, I don't want to go overboard. I don't want people to, in the comments say, hey, here you guys go again. No, we're not. I don't want to do that. But you saw the spring game. All you got to do. Okay, now he's throwing against a defense that's vanilla, and he's not throwing against Big Ten corners or Big Ten safeties or anybody. But the throws were the throws, and they were beautiful. That throw to Jalen Lloyd, I watched it last night again, was a gorgeous throw. He made a throw. That throw to the tight end Borkercher was on a rope, and it was right where it had to be. That was the best pass of the day.
The other thing he'll do is he'll check in and out of things.
Oh, he's really smart at the line of scrimmage.
And I don't know if they had that capability as well. I mean, I think he's training himself at a different level.
Oh, I think it surprised the defensive coaches a little bit how well he could change protections at the line of scrimmage as a true freshman and do it very adeptly. And Terrence Knighton told us in Belton, he torched the one sometimes.
Was it you or somebody else that told this story about there were some other coaches that met with the defensive staff and watched film of spring ball, and they're watching the cut-ups, and Raiola just was they were in the right coverages and doing the right things, but Raiola still was making the throws. Yeah, and the defensive staff's like, I mean, what do you even do here?
That wasn't me, but that's interesting. I'm not surprised. I mean, he had a good spring. All right. He put himself in position to be the starting quarterback. Now he's just got to take it into August.
The day that I heard, there was a few days in the spring where there was like just ridiculously blasting cold 35-mile-an-hour northern winds where nobody could make throws, and he was making throws.
Well, and people make fun of me and other people for saying this, but in this league, you can make fun of me if you want. I want a big quarterback, a 6'3" kid who weighs 210, 220, 230 pounds with big hands that can whip the ball into the wind. I do want that. And you know who else has said that? Matt Rhule. Matt Rhule's made the hands comment. He likes the big-handed quarterback. It means something. In this league, it does mean something.
Yeah, 2013 at Penn State, trying to throw in that game out there. We were out there.
Think about it.
And it was Christian Hackenberg for Penn, and he was
whipping into the wind. Hackenberg was a big quarterback. Now, Hackenberg, I don't know where he's at now, but
he was a 5-star, though. He's big time.
Big 5-star. He could whip the ball into the wind. That's what Raiola can do.
All right, let's take it.
Daniel Kalen can do that.
No, and
Heinrich's a big kid.
Harburg's got an arm.
Oh, Harburg is a good. I mean, he's one of the best looking players on the team. When you see
and the fourth guy they brought in, Gramstad, he's won national championships playing in snow games.
Cold, yeah.
I mean,
yes.
He's proven in that conditions too. So that room's in good shape. But all right,
it is.
Heading into headline 5 before we get to that. Husker Online headlines again brought to you by Zipline Brewing Company. Thanks to Zipline for sponsoring us here this week on the Husker Online show. Again, try the new ZipLite beer, 95 calories, 2.7 carbs. And remember, if you're not a member of HuskerOnline.com, try us out. 2 months for $1 as a new member. We're going to give that to you for $1 with the promo code NU1. That's 2 months for $1. Got to use the promo code NU1, and this is for new subscribers of HuskerOnline.com. All right, final headline number 5. Nebraska produces corn, cattle, and tight ends. And we saw 2 more Power 5 tight ends come out this year from the state of Nebraska. Ryman Ziebert is going to Stanford, but then Chase Lofton is going to Florida State. It is this incredible run that we've seen. It's been every year since 2015, Nebraska has had a Power 5 or Power 4 tight end come out of the state.
10 years.
And since that period of time, there have been 26 tight ends since the class of 2016 that have gone to Power 5, Power 4, or even Group of 5 schools. So 26 tight ends have gone on to play D1 football since 2016 out of the state of Nebraska. It is one of the craziest stats you'll see.
I don't even know what to say about it. And it's going, you know what, Sean? It's going to extend another year because Isaac Jensen already, as Brian points out, Brian Munson, our fabulous Brian Munson, points out in his column today, Isaac Jensen is already holding several D1 offers, including one from Nebraska. Millard South. Think about just Millard South right now with Chase Lofton and Isaac Jensen on the same team.
Amarian Jackson.
That's okay. I don't mean this. I don't mean this literally. It's like an embarrassment of riches.
Deshaun Prince is evidently transferred there from Central. They have Jet Tamala
at quarterback.
Yeah. They have Landon Von Seegren, a Power 5 O-lineman for the class of 2026.
They have 2 tight ends that are better than a lot of college teams. Jensen and Lofton are excellent.
Now Omaha West Side's not going away. I mean, they made some additions to their roster too.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Jackson. I mean, 2 of the best players from Lincoln Southeast and Lincoln North Star are going to play at West Side next year.
Give me them.
Maurice Purify, obviously the son of former Husker receiver Maurice Purify,
mm-hmm.
6'4" wide receiver, and then Dallas Jackson. Dallas Washington. And his, I believe he's the son, Brian Washington.
Oh, Brian Washington, former Nebraska safety?
Former Husker, yeah.
Former Nebraska safety? Is that right? This very well could be. But that, yeah, look, while you're looking that up, you think about this. I mean, you just think about what the state had in this recruiting class. Ryman Ziebert. He had an official visit to Nebraska before choosing Stanford. Lofton, we mentioned Lofton. He ends up at Florida State. And so Nebraska is in a good spot with Isaac Jensen. Also, by the way, the number 1 player in Colorado is Camden Jensen in next year's class. So I know we're throwing a lot at you. Is that Brian Washington's son?
Yeah, it's Brian Washington's son, 6 foot, 203 pounds, with a 36-inch vertical.
What position?
He's a receiver.
He's a receiver. His dad was a hard-hitting big safety that played for Nebraska in the 80s and went on to play for the Cleveland Browns, maybe somebody else. But I remember Brian very well.
Yeah, so Westside has added a lot of pieces to their team. Oh, wait a minute. I misspoke here. He's Millard South. I get all this mixed up. Okay. Dallas Washington is going to be at Millard South. Maurice Purify is going to be at Westside. But these
Millard
are 2
South is the number 1 team in the state.
These are 2 Lincoln kids.
Tell me that Millard South has to be number 1.
And I apologize for getting that wrong, but I mean, how do you keep up with these high school transfers? I mean, it's nuts.
It's like college.
But Lincoln kids, I mean, imagine like living in Columbus and saying we're going to go to high school in Omaha next year. I mean, it's what we're seeing happening with top players from the city of Lincoln.
Yeah, it's like the transfer portal has hit high schools.
I mean, can you imagine like the Rude brothers at Lincoln Southeast saying we're going to go play for Central next year? I mean, it's pretty insane.
Yeah, it's huge news. It's huge news. That's okay. Can I say this? It's huge news. It doesn't get covered much. I thought like the Maurice Purify news was pretty big news. Right?
Yeah, I don't think like for guys like Stu Popsicle and Mike Patterson and Bazinet, they do a great job. But
there's no criticizing.
They wait probably until they write their capsule because this stuff changes.
Right. Exactly. It'd be hard. Yeah.
Like there's just moving parts to it, but yeah, the number of moving parts and all that talent is assimilating the Millard South.
If I was a sports editor, I think, at one of those, at the World Herald or the Journal Star, I would get into that heavily and say, let's make this like it is in college. If there's a big name player or even a medium name player that transfers, let's do a story. It's a pretty big story, right? It's a big story that Maurice Purify's son transferred. That's
he placed at state track. I believe he's in triple or long. I mean, he's a specimen of an athlete.
We've watched him in camps. He's real. He looks like, now he hasn't had any offers, but he looks like he's a guy on the cusp of offers.
Yeah, and I think for him, there was like, hey, if you're going to do this to transfer, you got to do it now because the junior year matters so much. The senior year, like Chase Lofton transferring to Millard South, did nothing for his recruiting.
No, he was already on.
All of his recruiting is based on what he's done for Elkhorn North.
Yeah, how about that? But no, the tight end. Getting back to the tight end stat, since the 2016 class, 26 tight ends, as you said, have signed with Division I schools. Basically, 26 from Nebraska. 26. Yeah, that's a stunning number. There's just, what, Sean, there's just a lot of there must just be a lot of 6'5", 200 plus guys running around out.
When I shared this on your show, Vince Marrow years ago told me this. He's like, yeah, Sean, there's a lot of tight end.
Vince Marrow, that was 10 years ago.
When he went to Kentucky,
yeah,
he continued to recruit Nebraska.
Okay.
Because he's like, there's just a lot of good tight end bodies in Nebraska. And Vince Marrow played tight end in the NFL for a little bit.
Yep.
That's his forte at Kentucky. So, other coaches, and I think when you look at our neighbors, Iowa, the state of Iowa has also produced a lot of great tight ends and what they're doing in Iowa City. So this part of the country in general it tends to produce tight ends.
Yep.
There's more tight ends in this part of the country than California.
Yep.
Which doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Nebraska produces, as you've pointed out, Nebraska produces more tight ends than California. And
Texas, maybe. I mean, it depends if you want to take it Power 5 versus Group of 5, but the number of Power 5, it's an insane number for a state of under 2 million people.
And these guys are good. I mean, Carter Nelson, and earlier today, Sean, you handled this very well. I refer to him as Seethan Carter. Carter Nelson. I mean, you're talking about talent. Chase Lofton, talent. I mean, that is talent. I mean, he's going to go to Florida State. Now there'll be a lot of competition for him down there, but I imagine he'll do fine. Those guys can play. I mean,
yeah,
you watch them on film and they're just no brainers.
And like I said, I think it makes sense in the sense that, hey, Nebraska has Carter Nelson and Thomas Fedoni. Both those guys are higher.
Don't you think Florida State probably has some pretty good tight ends?
I mean, Fedoni and Nelson are as good of a combination as you're going to get in a recruit.
I have to look at that. I need to look at what Florida State has. Come on. I mean, they're top 10 team. Sure.
Carter Nelson was as highly recruited as any player to come out of the state in a long time.
I know. I know him.
I mean, he actually took
I run his fan club.
Sean. He took an official visit to Georgia.
Yeah.
Like there's people that try to like poo-poo but he was a Nebraska high school athlete of the year. And he was legitimately being courted in June by Georgia. There are guys in this state that get offers, but then the courtships kind of don't carry into June.
He's an elite athlete, and he's lifting weights for the first time.
And
what's that?
Chase Lofton, though, is obviously in that category, though. He had A&M, he had Missouri, he had Texas, he had Florida State, and Nebraska, all courting him in June.
Yeah.
Like you can measure a recruit by who's courting them in June.
Really courting them. I mean, like truly courting
January, February offers, okay.
Yeah.
But
hard to tell.
The courtship in June is really like, okay, they want this guy.
Yep.
And if you're not being courted heavily by those teams, usually you're not a guy they're going to take as a commit.
Oh, yeah. Nebraska, Missouri, A&M. That was a tough loss. That's a tough loss. They wanted him.
And now Christian Jones will wait on him. And
how long are we waiting on Jones, Sean?
He has not given any indication on when he'll make a decision.
And he has said he may take it into the fall.
And at that point, he's visited Auburn and he's visited Oklahoma. The question there is, are they pushing him to make a decision? Because everybody's in the same spot where they're sitting at 15 to 20 commits.
There are people in my ear, by the way, Sean, saying take him as your number one player in Nebraska. Christian Jones is the best. A couple people have watched our shows and said, no, Christian Jones is the best.
It depends how you project him, though. He's never played like a true in the box linebacker.
Right. Does he have to play in the box?
He's not really an edge guy.
Could you make him an edge in the college
Does
game?
he have the length and the measurables? The arm?
6'2.5".
I don't know. I don't know how much more upside is there to be a true edge in the SEC or the Big Ten.
I think you can be an edge at 6'2.5".
But that's a pro position in this league. You got to be a pro. If you're going to play edge at Nebraska or a high level pro, you got to be a pro.
I hear you.
Like you can't. It's hard to be sawed off on the edge and be a high level edge when you're going against first round tackles trying to get to a quarterback.
Right. No, that's 100.
So
I totally agree with you on that. I totally agree with
that. I think that's the debate. I mean,
who are you talking to? Who emphasizes height more than
But
anybody,
it is I mean, it's a
more
1A.
than anybody in the world?
It's a 1A, 1B as the top player in the state. No doubt. But On Three is not their rankings analysts, and it's not the writers. It's a true scouting professional group that does the rankings. They're not as high on Jones as Lofton.
Okay. By the way, height. Nebraska, no players in its 15-player class right now of 2025 smaller than 6 foot. Good job.
All right. Well, where are you going for the 4th?
Nowhere. I have to take care of my dog. No, my assignment is bullet. You cannot leave a dog that's afraid of the fireworks alone. It's animal cruelty.
You need to get caught up on the wire, it sounds like.
Sean, you nailed it. That's what's going to happen. Bullet's going to be on the bed with his head under the pillows, and I'll be watching the wire.
You and Lieutenant McNulty are going to be hanging out all weekend. We're heading to Colorado to see Lisa's brother.
Okay, you're going to Colorado where?
Denver and Vail.
Denver and Vail. Nice. Nice. A little different than what I deal with. That'll be fun. You take some Zipline.
Take some, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're going to take some Zipline. Would you take some Omaha Steaks with you? I'm kind of putting
probably not.
You've done that already.
You don't want to you don't want like a huge cooler in your car when you're driving. I mean, it's got to be a cooler can like take over your whole car if you have
if anybody knows travel tips.
We're not flying, we're driving though. So
you're taking that big SUV.
We're going to see Lisa's grandpa in Oshkosh, Nebraska.
Okay.
On the way out, and then get to Denver and then Vail. So it should be, and we'll be back next week. We got a little bit different schedule.
What is the schedule?
So Wednesday, we have a Wednesday Husker Online show, Friday headline. So there'll be a week between shows. We're dropping this one Wednesday, then we're back again next Wednesday. Robin is going to be on vacation.
Okay.
So it'll just be me and you and Abby.
Okay. So we have a little period where we're not going to be doing shows, just a week. So just hang with us. It's just a week. That's not.
We still have 2 shows next week. We're just spacing them out around the 4th. So
okay, Wednesday, Friday next week.
All right. Well, thank you again to Zipline, our sponsor of the show. And remember, sign up for HuskerOnline.com, 2 months for $1. Promo code NU1 will get that done for you. We hope everybody has a happy and safe 4th of July weekend.